So we have Tuesdays with Goffinet. I like that better than Tuesdays with Maury. Much more exotic and international. And we're so pleased. So join me in welcoming Goffinet McLaren.
Thank you very much indeed. I really don't need applause for what I do. I do it because of what's in my heart. And don't need applause, but thank you very much anyway. It's delightful to be here this morning, and I am so grateful to Bob for inviting me, and also Carol. I'm going to talk about plastic versus our planet, and I'd like to tell you how I got involved with this, how I became obsessed with the issue, and a little bit about how we formed the Chirping Bird Society. But usually I like to dedicate my presentation to either some of the dead animals that have died because of plastic pollution by entanglement or ingestion or whatever. But this morning I'd like to dedicate my presentation to Bob and Carol for giving me the privilege of being here to talk about this issue. So, my husband and I came to Polly's Island in 2006 to retire. And I had been born in Carrickfergus on the north coast of Ireland, and had been surrounded by water all of my life until we moved to Greenville. Greenville was too far away from the ocean. So I'd had a bit of a parting from the ocean and wanted to retire back. I did not realize at that time how things had changed. So the very first day walking on Litchfield Beach, I found a plastic bag. And I knew that balloons choked birds and were very dangerous to marine creatures. And I lifted this plastic bag and a chill went down my spine, because I said, whoops, what is this doing here? And I knew that plastic would have the same effect on birds and animals as balloons. So I went home to my husband and I said, guess what I found on the beach? And he said, well, I said, plastic bag. What is a plastic bag doing on the beach? So every day I went back and I found more and more plastic, and toys and sunglasses and cigarettes and all sorts of plastic plastic products. And I really became quite distressed, quite dismayed by all of this. So my husband suggested, he said, why don't you Google plastic in the ocean and, see what you can find. So I did. And much to my amazement, Captain Charles Moore from the Algalita Marine Research Foundation popped up. And indeed, plastic in the ocean was a very serious issue. So I called over to Captain Moore. Anyway, before I get to that, I started to rant and rave to everybody I met. This was 11 years ago. And at that time, really nobody wanted to hear about plastic. Nobody believed me that it was such a serious issue. Until one day, I was given a presentation at a political meeting. And this lady, Grace Gifford, came up to me and she said, I'd like to get involved with this issue. And she said, do you think we could maybe form a society? So I said, yeah, that would be a great idea. Well, how the Chirping Bird Foundation or Society was formed, I have to tell you, I was down in South Africa in 1967, at the time when apartheid was alive and well. And South Africa was a beautiful country, but I just simply could not stand this apartheid situation. And there was one little lady, one little parliamentarian lady among all of these big Afrikaner men, who kept talking about the evils of apartheid. And she went to visit Nelson Mandela on Robben Island twice, and came back and talked about the conditions that he was living under. And she talked so much about it, she was dubbed the Chirping Bird. So I heard Chirping Bird, and I thought, oh, we need more chirping birds. And if anybody knows Lee Brockington, she calls herself a screaming eagle.
Yes.
So Grace and myself formed the Chirping Bird Society to chirp, cheep and chitter about plastic litter. So I told you I had called over to Long Beach where Captain Moore was a sea captain, and he was the first person to discover one of the great plastic patches, which I'm sure you've all heard about, in the Pacific Ocean. And he confirmed all of my very worst fears, and he became my mentor. And he said back in 2006 that plastic is taking over and destroying our natural environment, is destroying our planet. So I went on to research how all of this happened and what happened. So we go back to World War II. And before World War II, there was no one-time plastic. In fact, there was no plastic at all until it was discovered that something cheaper than steel was needed to build ships and aircraft and tanks and things. And plastic was introduced back then, but only for wartime purposes. And in fact, there was plastic in the first atomic bomb, but at that time, individuals like ourselves, the public, did not use plastic. So after the war, in the 50s, the marketing industries wanted to increase the economy. I wanted to help the economy more so in America than anywhere else. And so the marketing engineers started this program which came to be known as planned obsolescence, where they would encourage people to buy more and more stuff. You know, they would encourage you to not just have one fridge, but 2 fridges. They would tell you one car wasn't enough, you need 2 cars. One television in the house was not enough, you would need 2 televisions. And of course it was all a part of keeping up with the Joneses, and the marketing companies succeeded in indoctrinating us into buying more and more stuff. So of course much of this stuff was one-time plastic. A lot of people like to say that we're addicted to plastic. I like to say that it was foisted upon us. We're not addicted to it. It was foisted upon us. We didn't ask for it. Nobody demanded it. Plastic just appeared. And in fact, I would go as far as to say it was thrust upon us. So you'll see from this chart that up until 1972, there was very little one-time plastic in our environment. By 1989, the quantities had doubled. By 1997, they had doubled again, and we're talking thousands, billions of tons of plastic here. By 2013, we were producing 150 billion tons of plastic. You take that accumulatively until 2013, and that became a total of 650 billion tons of plastic that was already on our planet. And plastic does not biodegrade, so it is there, and it will be there until long after we are all gone. And it is proposed that by 2050 we will be producing 1 billion tons of plastic per year. And we're talking about the United States alone. We're not taking into consideration the rest of the world at this point in time. So by 2050, there will be more plastic in the ocean than fish in the world's ocean. Just think about that. So we have what I call the bad boys. We have styrofoam cups, which those horrible, nasty, crushable, bird-killing styrofoam cups that people walk around with. We have plastic bottles, plastic bags, and plastic straws. And we use them by billions every year. So another way to look at it is plastic bags. We use 100 billion plastic bags every year. That's 275 million plastic bags per day going into our environment. Just think about those numbers. And this is only in the US. This does not take into consideration the rest of the world. Plastic bottles, we use 50 billion a year. That's 136 million plastic bottles every day. Just think about that. And they do not biodegrade. And people use them and throw them away. And with the plastic bottles, you have plastic caps. And the caps are just as dangerous as the bottles. So plastic straws, this is staggering. We use 500 million plastic straws in the US every day. It's enough to fill 37 school buses with plastic straws every day. Styrofoam cups, 25 billion a year. That's 68 million styrofoam cups every single day. I'll let you think about those numbers. So, in addition to those bad boys that I talk about, we also have microbeads. Microbeads, you may not have heard of microbeads, but microbeads are tiny, tiny, tiny little pieces of plastic that are inserted into our toothpaste, our exfoliants, shampoo, and they are so fine and they are so delicate that they go down our drains and out into the sewer systems and into the rivers and eventually into the ocean. And these micro plastics are so small that when they go into the ocean they look like fish eggs, and the fish ingest these microbeads. As well as that, most of our clothes today have plastic in them. And when we wash our clothes, microfibers, little microfibers release themselves from our clothing in the washing machine. And millions and trillions of these microfibers also descend into our sewer system and eventually into our ocean every day. And that does not, yeah?
Especially fleece.
Especially fleece, absolutely.
And I have written to LL Bean and to Land's End both, because they're using more and more fleece. And I'm telling them, you know, it's a bad thing and it's going to be overruled, but, you know, you need to just voluntarily stop using it.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. Let me introduce you to Debbie Trolson. Debbie is a chirping bird. Maybe she's a screaming eagle times two. But she's one of our most faithful and most diligent and hard-working chirping birds. So she's absolutely right. The microfibers are a very, very serious issue. And in addition to that, of course, we also have our food wraps, our cigarette lighters, our pens, with flip-flops, with plastic toys galore. What I'm not mentioning here are the beach chairs that are left on the beaches, the tents that are left on the beaches that never reach the landfill. The tides come in and wash them out into the ocean, and they eventually degrade. In total, there's trillions of plastic pieces entering our ocean every single day. And if I were to tell you that there are 500 times more pieces of plastic in our ocean than stars in our galaxy, would you believe it? So every time you see a star in the galaxy, you can think of 500 pieces of plastic in our ocean. How did all this happen? One day there was no plastic litter, and the next day we are literally swimming in it. The amount of plastic at a microscopic level in our oceans is sinister. In total, the sea contains 50 trillion microplastic particles. So how did we get here? From 1945 until 1955, we moved from a frugal society. During the war, we were a very frugal society. By 1955, we were a throwaway society. This is a Lifetime magazine photograph front page, and it illustrates how we have become a throwaway society. And everything at that time was designed to make life more convenient, you know, to help mother in the kitchen, to help children with lunch boxes and bags, etc., etc. So today, in our world, and all you have to do is walk into a drugstore to know that plastic is inescapable. We don't want it, we didn't ask for it, but we can only do the best we can do to reduce it. Plastic is everywhere. From the tallest mountain, Mount Everest, 29,000 feet above sea level, all this plastic debris left by campers. That plastic will blow all over. Birds will eat it, eagles will eat it. Anything that lives up there will ingest this plastic. And we go from the highest mountain to the depths of the Mariana Trench in the ocean, 36,000 feet below sea level, or 7 miles. 7 miles below sea level. The seabed is a plastic graveyard. Recent studies have been done on the Mariana Trench, and 100% of the samples of life down there, I have to be careful what I say here. I'm inclined to say orgasm. I'm trying to say organism. I'm trying to say organism. Every organism on the seabed of this trench, 7 miles below sea level, has plastic in it. So, you know, it's just mind-boggling to even think of. I had to write myself a note not to say organism. So how does all this plastic in it get into the ocean? Well, only about 10% of plastic ever gets recycled. The rest of it either goes into the landfills or somehow it gets into the ocean via storm drains, lakes, rivers, and eventually into the ocean. As Captain Moore would say, everything is downhill into the ocean. So the ocean is just like a trash can waiting for things to come. So does anybody know what a jar is? Yeah? You've heard of a jar? Yeah. When Captain Moore first discovered the first jar, he was en route from Hawaii to Los Angeles, and somehow went off his route and found himself in the doldrums where there's no wind. So he was literally in the doldrums for about a week in the North Pacific Ocean, and every time he looked out he saw floating plastic going by. For one whole week he saw nothing but plastic. So that was the first known jar. And how it's, well, I'll explain how it's found. We now know there's a jar in every single ocean. There is 2 in the Pacific, 2 in the Atlantic, 1 north, 1 south, and 1 in the Indian Ocean. In fact, if you can see the one in the Great Pacific Garbage Patch in the North Pacific, the trash comes off the Asian coast and it comes off the west coast of America, and the currents carry it into this jar or vortex, which just keeps going round and round as the plastic degrades into smaller and smaller pieces. And that jar in the Great Pacific jar is almost as large as that part of the ocean itself. It almost stretches from the Asian coast to the California coast. So every time Captain Moore goes out, he reaches the plastic soon. And it just grows wider and deeper every second of every day. So, as you can imagine, plastic has very serious impacts on our marine life, on our human habitat, on our bird and animal life on land, and on our human health. So let's take a look at marine life first. 70% of our planet is covered by oceans. So the impact, the plastic impact is very serious. The base of the marine food chain is plankton. Everybody knows plankton. And when Captain Moore discovered the first jar in 1997, he became obsessed with this plastic issue. And he went home to Long Island and he gathered a group of scientists together, and they went back to this area in 1999. And in 1999, he found 6 times more plastic than plankton in the ocean. So he was most distressed by this, and he couldn't stop thinking about it. Eventually went back 10 years later to 2009, and he found 36 times more plastic than plankton. In 2015, he went back again, 63 times more plastic than plankton. Yeah, 63 times more plastic than plankton. That's unpublished data yet. I just recently called over to Captain Moore to find out what the latest figures were. So based on his research, the plastic in the ocean is doubling every 3 years. So other marine life. In addition, plastic litter impacts all forms of ocean life. You look at this photograph and you can see a jellyfish, and what else do you see? A plastic bag. A turtle doesn't know the difference between a jellyfish and a plastic bag. And more turtles are washing up on the shore with their intestines impacted by plastic. And in fact, the South Carolina Aquarium is now doing special studies on how our turtles, I mean our beloved turtles that come here to nest, are being impacted. And I think this year 17 turtles were taken to the hospital, all with plastic in their tongues. This was one of the first turtles that was discovered eating a plastic bag. It was taken by a reporter from the BBC, Rebecca Hosking, who went on to change her life totally. She became a vegetarian and an environmentalist and an organic farmer after she discovered how plastic was polluting us. That photograph was taken in the Pacific near Hawaii. This is in Cape Town of South Africa. And this is an otter trying to remove a plastic bag from the baby's head. The photographer who took this obviously took the plastic bag off, but he took this photograph first. So from Cape Town, South Africa, we go to the North Pole. Plastic in the North Pole. How does it get there? Ocean currents. In addition to that, the ice is melting, and plastic that has been impacted in the ice is now being released. This is how our wonderful creatures are suffering. From there we go to back to the Pacific Ocean, and this is the contents of a whale. 40 huge black plastic bags were found in this whale washed up on the beach. A seal eating a plastic bottle. And if you look at the edges of that bottle, you'll see that it has been nibbled. So some other creatures have already been nibbling at that before the seal got the hold of it, and the cap is still on the bottle. This is a baby turtle, this is a hatchling turtle that somehow or other got itself entangled in one of those awful plastic 6-pack things. And you will notice how the shell is growing around the plastic. So this illustrates just how strong the plastic and how durable the plastic is, which is a good thing about plastic, but it's also a horrible thing. And now we have Mae West. Mae West is famous. Mae West was found in a canal in New Orleans, and she had, when she was a baby, she had crawled into a plastic milk, you know those rings around the top of a plastic milk bottle? She had crawled into that, and her shell grew in a figure 8, which again illustrates the strength of plastic. So a little boy found Mae West. She's a snapping turtle, and he released the ring, of course. And Mae West, she's called Mae West because of her very slim waist. But Mae West has been the epiphany, been the cause of many people having an epiphany about plastic. So here is a whale that is entangled by a plastic fishing rope. And the more the whale tries to disentangle itself, the more it gets caught up. And the rope is cutting into its flesh. So unless this whale is rescued by a deep sea diver, and we now have deep sea divers whose jobs it is to disentangle and release marine life, this whale will die a very painful death. Let's go locally here to Litchfield Beach, where this loon was discovered in balloons. And again, balloons aren't plastic, but they do the same thing. On the ribbons was a message, "Happy first birthday." So using balloons for celebrations is definitely not a good thing. We can use all sorts of other things to celebrate. Weddings, birthdays, whatever. We do not have to use balloons. And this is a seal that is entangled in a fishing net. And again, these animals have to come to the surface to breathe in order to live. Well, there is no way that this animal can be saved. Now, this is an albatross chick. Does everybody know about the albatross? The albatross is one of the most magnificent flying creatures in the world. It has a wingspan of about 10 feet. They are beautiful creatures, and they live on a very remote island in the Pacific called Midway. And anyone that knows anything about World War II will know where Midway was. Anyway, the Albatross now makes Midway Island its home. And have you seen the movie about the pelicans, about the penguins, March of the Penguins? Yeah. The albatross has a very similar lifestyle to the penguins, and both parents are totally devoted to their chick, egg first, and one parent will go off and find food while the other parent sits on the egg and takes great care of the chick. And then when the chick hatches, one parent will go off to look for food. And an albatross will fly for hundreds of miles to find food to bring back for the chick. And an albatross is very much attracted to bright colors. So the mother or the father of the chick will come back with, I don't know if you can see the contents of this chick, but there's plastic bottle caps, there's cigarette lighters, there's just pieces of raw plastic. Can you see? Yeah. So when the mother or the father come back to the chick, they regurgitate this food down into the chick's tummy. Well, obviously, if you're full of plastic, you will not feel hunger, and you will not desire nutritious food. So these chicks never make it to the ocean. And if they make it to the ocean, they don't last for very long. There's a new movie coming out called The Albatross, which was made by a guy called Chris Jordan, if you remember that name, Chris Jordan. And the movie The Albatross, it's a must-see. I went to Charleston to see the release of the movie, and you would not have heard a pin drop in that theatre. It was just a magnificent experience, but it was also a gut-wrenching experience. And I came back to my friend's house in Sullivan's Island and drank 4 glasses of wine to sort of ease the pain. So, on to human habitat. Plastic also has a great impact on our human environment. This is Camilla Beach on the southeast coast of Hawaii, and it's called Camilla Beach because Camilla means swirling. So when the ocean comes in, the swirling currents wash all this plastic litter up onto this beach. And you'll see Captain Charlie there. He's in the back there in the blue shirt and the cap. That's Captain Charles Moore. Now this beach is cleaned twice a month. And every time people come back to clean up the beach, they'll find it just like this. Now, you will notice the white sand. That is not sand. That's plastic. That's plastic particles. It breaks down into such very, very fine pieces that beaches are now becoming plastic. And in this particular beach, you have to dig down at least 1 foot before you actually come to sand. I mean, it's a crime against humanity. It's just appalling. This is the Waccamaw River. And as Captain Moore points out, everything is downhill to the ocean. So even though we hate the thought of it, the Waccamaw River does accumulate a lot of debris and will flow down into our beautiful inlet. This is Ori County on a windy day. That's plastic bags, how they blow and catch in the fence. Ori County is no longer taking garden debris in plastic because it all goes through a machine and the plastic gets cut up into tiny pieces. So Ori County has taken the initiative not to take any more debris in plastic, and nothing would suit Ori County better than to be rid of plastic bags. So that's the next step in the Chirping Bird's goal. Okay, this is the Los Angeles River here, and you can see the river. You see the river on the left-hand side with the trash flowing down, and this is the contents of the river in one day. So Captain Moore put a net around the mouth of the river in order to catch the debris. That's one day. So it's a global problem. In addition to being an American problem, it's a global problem. So we have looked at the United States, and in addition to all that you've seen in the United States, we have in the Philippines this little girl, 2 little girls playing in this trash. Can you imagine one of our children playing in this trash? This is Mumbai, India. Same thing. In fact, the plastic is so thick here that you can see a dog is actually walking on it. I get emotional every time. I've done this a dozen times, and I still get emotional looking at these photographs. This is Lagos, Nigeria. And Lagos is now one of the fastest growing cities in the world, but they haven't yet learned how to deal with their litter problem. So here we have a beautiful boat, ship, cruiser, whatever you like to call it, sitting in this plastic litter. China. And these men are trying to find some decent plastic bags that they can sell. But, you know, again, this is all in a river, and all of this will flow into the ocean. Now this is the CITARUM River in Indonesia. This is supposed to be the dirtiest river in the world, but there are other rivers that are catching up fast. So let me explain to you how this happens. This river rose in the mountains. The rising was in the mountains. It was perfectly clean. So as it descends down the mountains, the first thing it encountered was a dairy farm, and all the effluents from the farm flowed into the river. Then it encounters tea plantations, rice plantations. Then it eventually meets humanity, and in Indonesia there is not much sanitation, so everything takes place in the river. Bathing and all the rest of it takes place in the river, and by the time it reaches this little village of Bundeg, where there are houses on either side of the river, that's what it looks like. Children play in that, they wash in that. 60% of the children there have impetigo, you know, that ghastly skin rash that's almost impossible to cure. And this is the most recent find. This is an area of plastic 5 miles square off the coast of Honduras. Now, if that is not a crime against humanity, I really do not know what is. Again, that is just horrifying. So, animal life on land. Animals are also affected by plastic on land. Here's 2 swans, either fighting or playing with a plastic bag. But one way or the other, they will ingest some of this plastic, and it will stick in one of those long necks, one of those necks that I'd like to have. And here's a swan that has actually nested in the plastic. Can you see the eggs? Yeah. So those eggs are going to hatch, and these little chicks are going to be living in this plastic and getting entangled in it. And I can't find words to express the horror. I have a friend in Anderson who has a goat farm, and the goats were starting to drop dead. And she had no reason. She did not understand why. Well, what happens? And you will relate to this because you see this along our roads, where the plastic is plastic bags, bottles, and all sorts of crap are along the road. And the grass cutters come along and they cut down the grass, they cut the plastic into tiny little pieces with it. Birds come along and they just peck at it and ingest it. Well, the goats were doing the same thing. Plastic was blowing into the fields. The farmer would come along, he'd cut the grass, the plastic was chopped up into little tiny pieces and baled, and then the goats were eating the hay, the plastic was getting into their tummies, and they were dropping dead. So, goats, cows, this is India. In India, cows are sacred, but look where they're living. I watched a movie of a cow being opened and the plastic being literally dragged out of its intestines. And these poor cows, they're suffering agony. Would you like to drink the milk of one of those cows? So, camels, even in the desert, camels are dropping dead. 1 in every 2 camels dyes of plastic, and I really didn't want to show you this photograph, but I feel that people have to know. This is a camel. And there's an area here called Death Valley where all these dead camels are put. Hurts my heart. Anyway, plastic also affects our human health. When the raw plastic is produced, of course, it's made from plastic bags, or all plastic are made from fossil fuels, either petroleum or gas. And then chemicals are added to the virgin plastic to shape it into the different shapes that the industry wants. So one of the plasticizers or chemicals that are used are called bisphenol A, BPA. And BPA helps to harden plastic for a bottle or for a zippy cup or for whatever purpose. And BPA is a hormone disruptor. And your hormone system is one of the most important systems in your body. And the slightest little thing can upset your hormone system. I don't know if anybody's ever suffered from a hormone problem, but I had chemo, and I know that my hormones were thrown totally out of whack for a while. In Europe, BPA has been banned because in other countries you have to prove that something is good enough to put on the market before you can put it on the market. In the US, you have to prove that it is not good enough before it will be taken off the market. So we have scientists who write papers bemoaning the fact that BPA is a hormone disruptor. And I wouldn't even feed my hummingbirds with a plastic container because imagine the hormone system of a little hummingbird. So anyway, in the United States, BPA is still used, except for baby products, except for baby bottles and zippy cups, but it's still in toys. The BPA is still in toys. Babies suck on these different things and ingest these plastics. And we don't know what these chemicals are doing to our babies. Dr. Frederick von Saal is a professor of biological sciences, and he has studied BPA, and I actually know some people who have had total body tests done before they became pregnant. So it's amazing, just even if you avoid plastic as much as you possibly can, your body is still going to contain some BPA. So Dr. Frederick von Saal says that the potential implications on human health boggle the mind. And other experts on BPA have said that they are worried that plastics might be leading to human exposures with unknown effects. We don't know. So while we don't know the definitive proof, it is suggested that we use the precautionary principle, and that is just to try and avoid the chemicals as much as we can. Does that all make sense? Mm-hmm. Yeah. In addition to that, the plastic industry will do everything in its power to try and keep making this BPA, because obviously it's very financially lucrative for them. So plastic is also in our human food chain, and there are other ways that chemicals can enter our body. So plastic breaks down into microplastics, these microplastics. And these microplastics float around in the ocean, and they absorb other contaminants that are in the ocean, and they float around the ocean or swim around the ocean, absorbing these other contaminants. Could be dioxins of some sort. And then the fish eat these eat these pieces of plastic, and subsequently the plastic ends up on our food chain, on our dinner plates. And in fact, we have to remember that what goes in the ocean goes in you, goes in us. Prince Charles was recently at a convention, and he stated that plastic is already on our menu. And this is one of the things that we're trying to do in Surfside, is we're trying to get a ban on plastic bags or plastic, because we feel so highly about our fishermen and the restaurant business, the tourism business, that really is a question of, do we want plastic or do we want our fishermen to survive? So that's just something to think about. Believe it or not, it's also in our drinking water. It's also in our tap water. 12 countries were analysed earlier this year, and 83% were found to be contaminated with plastic. And that also applies to bottled water. Plastic chemicals have been found in bottled water. And the water in bottles is really nothing more than tap water. I mean, people buy plastic bottled water because they think it's cleaner, but in fact it is not. And worst of all, it's in our beer.
Now we all want to get involved.
That's what I was hoping. It's in our beer. 14 different types of beer in Germany were tested, and all tested positively for plastic. So we come to the point that, are we under attack? You know, the American Chemical Council, or the ACC, is the largest lobbying group in the world, and it represents petrochemical corporations such as Dow, DuPont, Monsanto, Shell, Coca-Cola, and 60 other big corporations. And it's the job of the ACC to represent the plastic industry as well. The oil industry and the plastic industry go hand in glove. So, from the time that plastic started being introduced and foisted on the public, the ACC got away with murder. Nobody opposed them, nobody checked them out, nobody questioned them. Although I have recently discovered that the industry knew that plastic in the ocean was going to be a problem as far back as the 70s. However, Captain Moore discovered the garbage patch in the Pacific in '97. He wrote a paper about it in 2001, and he awakened what we call a sleeping giant, because suddenly the ACC realized that somebody was onto them. And they did everything in their power to discredit Captain Moore. It denied there was a problem with Captain Moore's findings, disparaged him. Then the ACC claimed that recycling was the answer to the plastic problem. And that was so that if people felt good about recycling, they could continue to manufacture more plastic. It also blamed the consumer for littering. So the ACC even sponsored a California school program to promote plastic recycling rather than reduction. So they went so far as to create a textbook for schools in California to promote the plastic. So now we come to the difficult part to swallow. Plastic litter has, it's now a moral issue. Pope Francis has called it eco-sin, and Polly Higgins, a UK environmental lawyer, refers to it as ecocide. And remember the name Polly Higgins, because Polly Higgins is trying to introduce a fifth crime against humanity, the crime of ecocide. And she is making progress. You can Google Polly Higgins and you'll read all about her. She's an absolutely fascinating character. So a question that we have to pose to ourselves: if by using one-time plastic, are we complicit in destroying wildlife and poisoning the planet? Just something to think about, you know. We all have different opinions about it. So what can we do? Well, we can carry our own reusable bags. Let me show you. I've had this old thing here for 10 years. Every family uses approximately 1,000 plastic bags a year. So, I mean, technically I've saved 10,000 plastic bags by using this whole thing. And I wash it. I can wash it. The plastic industry says that reusable bags create bacteria. If you can wash it, there's no problem. I grew up without plastic bags. I grew up with reusable bags when we all went to the stores with a bag. So, so we can carry our own reusable bags, and we can carry our own reusable water bottles. Stainless steel, glass, everlasting plastic if you like, but something to carry your water. And we can carry our own reusable coffee cups, which will certainly help restaurants and bakeries and coffee shops that, you know, have not yet converted to non-plastic product. And we can refuse, in fact we must refuse plastic straws. Plastic straws get into the ocean, and if you ever saw a turtle with a plastic straw up its nose, it would frighten you. Horrible. And anyway, let your servers know that you suffer from PIS. What is PIS? Plastic Intolerance Syndrome. So every restaurant I go into, I say, before you start, I suffer from plastic intolerance syndrome. I can't have plastic. Thank you very much. And people are very accommodating. They, you know, they pay attention. They look at you a little strangely, but they pay attention. And what else can we do? We can write letters to the editor, making people aware of the plastic issue. We can write to our legislators. Our legislators are probably the worst examples of using plastic. Every committee meeting you see all the little plastic bottles lined up in front of their desk. You can become a chirping bird. You can chirp, cheep and chitter about plastic litter. You don't have to do anything else. You don't have to take a pledge. You don't have to donate money. You don't have to do anything. You just become a chirping bird. Or a screaming eagle, whatever you like. You can use Facebook, Twitter to spread the word. Tell your kids about Solly Saves the Seas. It's a book that educates children. It's really a book about good manners, good beach manners. And adults enjoy the book just as much as the kids. We could take ownership. We must remember, we are the consumers. We are the ones who are giving the businesses our money. And so we can ask for what we want. We can demand what we want. We certainly don't want to give our money to the plastic industry. We are the customers, we are the constituents. We are the constituents of our senators and legislators. And we can tell them we do not want this stuff. And we can tell the shops that we don't want plastic. We can say, no thank you, plastic is destroying our planet. Now, after hearing all of that and thinking that this is the most dismal presentation you've ever heard, and this is so awful, there are good things happening. 10 years ago, when I started this, nobody wanted to hear. Now, oceanic organizations and environmental organizations are coming together to fight this issue under the heading of Break Free from Plastic. www.breakfreefromplastic.org. Anybody can join Break Free from Plastic. They started off with 800 worldwide groups, and now there's there may be 1,000 by this time, opposing plastic. And what the goal is to go to the plastic industry and say, you have to stop making this one-time plastic. This is destroying our planet. We cannot have this. And the plastic industry will do nothing until we put the pressure on them. And if we don't want it, and if we don't buy it, they won't make it. So a final thought on all of that is, if we do nothing, we will lose everything. But let me read you something else of importance. I'm going to read this to you because I can't remember it word for word. In February of this year, the United Nations Environmental Programme announced that it had declared an ocean war on plastic. It formed the Clean Seas campaign. 30 countries have already joined this campaign, with the exception of the US. We have to push the US to join this. The Clean Seas campaign aims at eliminating major sources of marine plastic and changing shopping habits. The goal is to eliminate major sources of pollution, including microplastics in cosmetics and single-use disposable plastics, by pressuring governments and individuals to rethink the way goods are packaged and their own shopping habits. Eric Solman, the head of the UN Environment, stated, "It is past time that we tackle plastic problem that blights our oceans. Plastic pollution is surfing onto our beaches, settling onto the ocean floor, and rising through the food chain onto our dinner plates. We've stood by too long, as this problem has gotten worse. It must stop." And with that, I wish you a very happy Christmas, Plastic Happy Christmas. Thank you very much for listening, and I hope that somewhere a wee bit of that story got into your heart.